Welcome to Critical Role Demystified. I'm Mike Christensen, and this is the series where I break down the lessons we can learn, as GMs and as players, from episodes of Critical Role. Today we're tackling episode 59, The Feywild. Liam is Skyping into the game, but despite Pike being written out in the last game, Ashley is actually here at the table. Filming was delayed a week, so she was able to join for this game. This is actually a nice quick lesson. Players may be able to join the game even though there is no story reason for them to be there, and no way for it to actually make any sense within the story. But they're your friends, and this is a game, so just make it work and let them play. It's better for everyone. As the game begins, Matt opens with some of his trademark narration, and I'm actually going to let this clip play for a little bit longer because I want to talk about what Matt does with this narration. Or, to be more accurate, what he doesn't do.
As you step out into the temperate air, you're struck by the vibrant purples, blues, and pinks of sunset that envelop the skies and the clouds above the tree line. The smell of fresh morning dew and poppy upon the breeze fills your head, and your feet wade through tall, thick grasses that tickle your knees with each step. Vine-covered tree trunks rise all around you, curling as they stretch upward like a bending dreamscape, and hundreds of small, bobbing fairy lights glow in the shadowed distance of the forest. Looking about you, you can see what appear to be clusters of mud and small pools of water that are scattered in your vicinity, some 10, 15, even 30 feet apart. Just small little pools that dot the landscape, almost like pebbles scattered across a small field. What do you guys want to do?
So obviously, Matt is excellent at coming up with evocative narration. These details are really good at painting a picture. And he's not just focusing on visuals, as he so often does. Matt seems to be a very visual person. Usually you'll just get one extra sensory detail, like a sound or a smell. But here we get the smell of morning dew and poppy, and we get touch, the tickling of tall grass on their knees. It's a really great piece of description. Except for one key problem. The party has no idea what they're supposed to do. They don't even really know what they can do. Matt has put so much emphasis on presenting an evocative scene, he didn't really put anything in that they can interact with. Vex starts talking about how they have no way to get their bearings, and Percy starts looking for any sign of construction, and only after he makes a perception check does Matt actually tell him that past the tree line, the fairy lights seem to be surrounding some sort of small old stone structure. Percy and Keyleth race toward it, which is a nice character beat to show that these two are so excited to be in the Feywild that they throw caution to the wind and race through the grass with reckless abandon. But also, they're probably at least a little bit excited because the group now has something to interact with. And it's kind of weird that nothing like that was actually included in the initial description. It seems like anything the players could actually interact with was essentially hidden behind a role. And Matt didn't even prompt them for those roles, they had to ask him what they saw. Look, I know a lot of GMs feel the pressure to run games like Matt Mercer, especially if their players really love Critical Role. But I hope this scene demonstrates that it's not enough to just drop your players into a weird landscape and ask them what they want to do. You should actually give them some hints about what they can do in those descriptions. All the flowery language you use doesn't matter if it doesn't give the players any sense of what options are available to them. Which kind of makes this beautiful narration a waste of time. That seems harsh, and obviously it helps set the scene, and that's not nothing, but if he had just described the stone structure in the distance, or, put them right next to it right away, then I think it would have worked a lot better. Or, they did try to appear next to where Grog came through in the pre-stream game, so Matt could have turned to Travis and said, "You recognize this area, and you know that the Nymph's Pond is just through those trees," or whatever. And then once again, his players would have some better momentum for the start of the game. Because starting a game with the players in a random location with no idea where to go and what to do is kind of a bad way to start a game session, especially if they didn't realize they were going to be lost when they started the session, but you're just not giving them anything to work with. It kind of makes them feel like they're missing something obvious, and it kills the momentum of the game. Slight spoilers for the rest of this video, but not that much actually happens in this session, especially during this first hour. And I think that's because his players just kind of don't know what to do, and that stems, at least in part, from the fact that Matt's opening narration was weirdly vague. But it's not just his opening narration that's the problem. As the party continues to interact with the space, Matt continues to be way more vague than normal. The party approaches that structure and finds a small remnant of a stone wall, the rest of the building or structure long ago claimed by the wilderness. But this wall is next to a pool of water. Vex asks if it looks like the pool of water on the other side of the portal, in the Frostweald, and Matt says, "I mean, it's a pool." Come on, Matt, what are you doing? Give your players something to interact with, or they'll just spin their wheels. Tell Grog whether this pool looks familiar or not. He's been here before. Or at the very least, don't phrase your answer like you're implying it was a dumb question, because it wasn't. Sure, maybe you don't definitively want to imply that a pool of water from the material plane has an exact mirror in the Feywild, because that may not be the relationship you want to establish between these two planes. But you also don't want to say, no, they're totally different, because then the party might feel like they're lost. But if you just tell them, I mean, it's a pool, You're making it seem like a stupid question, and that just gives the players a lot less to work with. And Matt normally doesn't behave this way, unless he really doesn't seem to understand why the players are asking whatever questions they're asking. Maybe he thinks it's obvious that the question doesn't matter because clearly they are where they meant to teleport to. After all, they got here through a magic spell, so how could they be in the wrong location? Well, you haven't told them that Grog recognizes anything around them, and there is no nymph here in sight, and there's nothing to interact with, so the party is starting to view this as a problem to solve. A better response to that question might have been, no, it doesn't look like the same lake, but you do know that Keyleth's spell named that lake in the description, so as far as you know, you're in the right place. That might seem like a small change, but it would have had a substantial impact on the players. Right now, they're trying to figure out where they are. But if you can confirm, or at the very least just imply that they are in the place that they were trying to go, then they'll start looking for the nymph, and that'll send them down a much more productive line of questioning as they interact with the space with a much more concrete goal in mind. Anyway, despite everyone in the party saying, don't touch anything, Keyleth picks a flower so she can press it into a book, because they don't really have anything else to do while they're here, so they might as well interact with the space in some way. And the flower instantly dies, the vines retract off the stone wall, the tree canopy closes in around them, and there's a splash of water on the other side of the wall. This is actually a really good moment from Matt. They're in this very surreal landscape, and so they need to learn very quickly that their actions will have consequences. They can't just do these little moments that just seem like flavor. Everything will have repercussions. An impossibly beautiful nude woman pokes her head over the wall, and she gets startled and jumps into the water. As she does so, Percy is literally struck blind by her beauty. They ask Grog if he recognizes the woman, but he and Scanlan were hanging back, so they admit they weren't paying attention. That is a fun character moment from them, but it also kind of speaks to the aimlessness of the party. Even something like, who should go look behind the wall to see if the woman is still there, becomes a debate. And it really doesn't help that everything they do is now being hit with a roll request. For example, Vex asks, does Grog recognize the pool? Because she wants to make sure that they're in the right place. But Matt asks Grog to make a roll, and when Grog doesn't roll very high, Matt basically says, it looks kinda similar, but you're not sure, you were distracted last time. And sure, okay, very justifiable for him to have been distracted last time he was here, but this still is part of a strange pattern in this session. I do not know why Matt is hiding so much information in this game. Maybe he just wants the Feywild to seem mysterious, but the end result of this behavior means restless players who are unsure what they should do, so I really don't care for it. Grog tries to call out to the nymph, and Scanlan agrees to be his Cyrano. And I really appreciate how quickly Travis jumps on this as a moment with some real comedic potential. He genuinely makes a meal out of this, and Sam yes-ands him in a terrific way.
Oh, nymph, hear my call.
Oh, nymph, hear my ball.
Nope, call.
Call.
Once we spent an afternoon together.
Once we spent an afternoon together.
The sun never shone brighter.
The sun never shone brighter.
The clouds were never quite as fluffy.
The clouds were never quite as fluffy.
Oh, it would make me a man again to see you once more.
Oh, that was too much.
Oh,
Oh,
it
would make me a man again to see you as once more. I have a small dick.
The nymph laughs and emerges from the pool, walking across the water, and she recognizes Grog and the other party members. She reintroduces herself as Nala and asks them to be more gentle next time. AKA, please don't pick the flowers. It's at this point when Pike appears in her astral projection form, startling Nala and sending her back into the pool. Matt describes how Pike waved goodbye to her friends, but then she just missed them so much, she just appeared here in her astral form without even trying to do so. And sorry, but if that was going to be the entire explanation, if Pike is only here through the power of vibes, and if she isn't appearing in a badass impactful moment like she did in the Whitestone arc, then why did it take 30 minutes to get around to introducing her? We are a half hour into a 3-hour game session, and that may not seem like a long time, but there was literally no reason not to bring her in right away. Matt could have just explained that Pike immediately felt like she missed them so badly, she accidentally astrally projected the moment they cast the spell, and then she wouldn't have had to sit out for a good chunk of the game. And if Matt was waiting to introduce her once Nala was in the scene, then you know what? I'm doubling down on my earlier note. Put them right next to the pool and or stop being coy about whether or not they're in the right place. Normally, I don't need to be this critical of Matt, especially this much, this early in a video, but he's doing a lot of things that I really think we should learn from and not do at our own games. Grog convinces Nala that Pike isn't a threat, and she re-emerges from the pool. She can't undo Percy's blindness, so the party will have to figure that out themselves. They ask about the Shademark Bog, and Nala says that it is 2 days duskward from here. The sunlight never changes, or at least in this part of the Feywild, so they'll just have to head toward the perpetual dusk. She never leaves the glade, she is bound down to it, but she does hear stories about the rest of the Feywild from other travelers when they happen to come through, which is very infrequently. The party feels bad for her, and they ask what they can bring her, and she asks for some books so she can learn a little bit more about the world. This is such a nice character detail, and the party really feels for her immediately. They really like her. So Vex actually gives Nala the 30 gold book she's been studying for information about the Raven Queen. Grog asks what they should be wary about, and Nala says everything. Scanlan asks for specifics, and she says they just need to be wary. There are lots of liars in the Feywild, and plenty of folks who would want to use the mortals as toys or playthings. Scanlan asks if there's anyone they can trust, and Nala says it's very hard to find people they can trust. Vex asks if there's any protection Nala can grant them, and Vax doubles down on asking for any last-minute advice. I'm always fascinated by moments like this because Vox Machina does it a lot, but I would imagine that a lot of D&D groups do this. Because you might have noticed, they kind of keep asking the same question in different ways. What should we be careful about? Who can we trust? Any last advice? In my estimation, when players ask an NPC variations on the same question over and over, they want a better answer. They want to ask the right question so they can get the right answer. I don't think this behavior is exclusive to video game players, but it definitely does remind me of when video game players click through every dialogue tree option because they want to be thorough. We'll also sometimes see this when players ask the same question to multiple different NPCs, like when Keyleth asked the Sun Tree about the Feywild, despite Allura already giving them a lot of information about the Feywild. However, while the players are hoping Nala will give them a better answer, or maybe just a more complete answer, Matt doesn't want to give them a better answer, assuming he even has one. After all, not only would an NPC telling them, only talk to these NPCs and don't talk to these other ones, potentially undercut the drama of the Feywild to know all the right answers in advance, but it would also limit the players' options and prevent them from having the freedom to do things the GM didn't expect. See, players are paradoxical. They want to do everything rational and logical that they would do in order to survive. But if they actually got everything they wanted, the game would be a lot less dramatic, and they would have less fun. And players often don't realize that they are essentially asking for the answers to the test in advance, and when you're playing a game like Matt Mercer's, where role-playing and interactions are really important and it's more of a high-adventure story, that means they're basically asking him to give up all of his twists that they love so much. It's a contradiction, but it's also basically a constant. Players do this all the time. So in this case, as the party keeps asking the nymph for Feywild cheat codes, Matt does something really smart. He pivots the conversation so Nala gives them a boon, so she's clearly helping the best way she can. She casts Bark Skin on Percy. This more or less leaves the players satisfied. They still want more information, but they can essentially feel like Nala has done everything she was going to do, because she gave them a tangible reward, so they stop asking her for stuff. Then she says goodbye and returns to her lake. Before the others go duskward, they have to cure Percy's blindness.
We're tearing ourselves apart in the Feywild.
I'm just reminding the dear what side her bread is buttered on.
Let Pike get rid of this blind spot so we can all be together again.
I mean...
Now, first of all, amazing joke. Incredible joke. But also, the reason they're all goofing off and making a meal out of this, I would suspect, is because the session put them in that mood early on. They don't have momentum, so of course it takes them 5 minutes to agree to cast a spell they were already going to cast to fix Percy. It takes a few hours of walking to leave the tree line, and Vex catches sight of somebody who seems to be following them, but she can't see where they went. As they walk, Vex asks Keyleth to teach her how to speak with animals, but this is just a narrative justification because Laura realized that she should have actually had an extra spell, so this is how she's working it into the story. She talks to Trinket and makes sure that he's actually okay with being put into the locket, and he says he is. This is absolutely the right answer. If he said, I hate it, she would never do it again, and that would screw up a lot of their travel, so it was never an option. Matt had to have Trinket say, yes, it's cool with me. They stop to make camp in a field, and they can just barely see a shining city far ahead. Vex flies up and sees somebody walking not too far from the group, a satyr who seems to keep leaping in the air, then dropping down and drawing something in his thick book, then leaping up again. She grabs onto him and pulls him through the air, bringing him back to the group. In the process, he loses his quill, and his ocarina is broken, but he still has his book, so they give that a read. And they are treated to more of Matt's hyper-detailed narration, but maybe not the type they're used to.
The picture you come to, as of right now, is a very, very finely detailed sketch of of Grog.
Oh.
Very well drawn, but he has bulging eyes, big buck teeth, and what looks to be like a very, very tiny penis.
We'll start gently flipping through some of the pages.
There are drawings of the entire party, but with like extremely exaggerated, cartoonish parody pictures. For Pike, her head is extremely large.
Like Six Flags Magic Mountain caricature kind of vibe?
Yeah. With like a hint of Mad Magazine.
Sure, political ad
where
style.
It's based, there's like just
political
it's essentially a book full of dick butts. It's just him drawing and vandalizing the image of a number of you guys. Like there's a picture of what looks like Vax and Keyleth that are both just covered in poo and like slapping it on their face and going like, I've written in Elvish, I love this, like with the word bubble. It's essentially just like a kid entertaining himself with a bunch of stupid pictures.
This is an awfully expensive book to be
drawing that
being
in.
shitty.
So
I'm going much earlier in the book to see what's there.
You start seeing what look to be a number of elven individuals. You see people in like really, really nice regal armor, but all of them are like just pooping themselves. There's a bunch of elvish ladies with just oversized floppy boobs and like smacking each other in the face. It's truly,
All the way to the
truly childish.
Oh my god, he's the
But
best.
they're all really well drawn and well shaded. Like there is a serious talent to the artwork. It's just his skewed intent of imagery is fascinating.
In this case, there's a whole lot of detail in these descriptions, but clearly there's nothing for them to interact with, just like in the initial Feywild description. Right? I mean, there's nothing especially useful in the book, so does this waste time? No, absolutely not. This is actually completely different and much better. First of all, we do get confirmation that there are armored elves in this book, so that seems like a clear sign that Garmelie has at least seen these Singhorn elves. He probably stole this book from Singhorn, since the elves appear very early in the book. But also, just from a role-playing perspective, these descriptions are enormously useful. They set Garmelie apart from any other NPC we've ever seen, making him instantly memorable. These drawings also help set the tone for the Feywild. Like, you can't really imagine running into somebody like this in Westron or Craghammer, but here, the fact that Garmelie exists and behaves this way helps set the player's expectations for how some of the residents of the Feywild might behave. Things are going to get a little bit strange while they're here. This scene also just makes the players laugh, and you know what? That's still valuable. And arguably most importantly, it makes the players like Garmelie, which means they end up bringing him into the mansion, since they think he's actually going to lead to some really fun role-playing scenes. But they also think that he can tell them some useful information about the Feywild, and about Singhorn, since it's just arrived in the Feywild. And all that effectively means that the party is on track to trust Garmelie, despite the fact that multiple people have warned them not to trust anybody while they're in the Feywild. This should be fine. Also, Matt calls for a break right as they bring Garmelie into the mansion, and this is so smart. Some of the players already seem to know exactly what they want to ask Garmelie, Taliesin most of all, but potentially Liam as well, I think. But going to a break now will also help give the other players a chance to think about any questions they might have for Garmelie, or anything else they'd like to get from him, or do for him. Inside the mansion, after the break, they ask what Garmelie knows about Singhorn and what he knows about the Feywild and the Shademurk Bog specifically. Garmelie tells them that he's seen the army very active in Singhorn, but doesn't know why. He's also indefinitely borrowed some trinkets he spotted around the city. The Shademurk, on the other hand, scares him. They ask Garmelie to be their guide to the Shademurk. They need somebody who knows the land, and he's extremely reluctant to do so. But he will agree in exchange for them giving back his book and stealing a few items for him from Singhorn. And why would he want anything from Singhorn? Well, because Matt is tempting them with the option to get what they think they need, a guide who can get them through the Feywild, but in exchange, they will have to go into the city where Vex's and Vax's father lives. As they're discussing this, Matt jumps up and whispers to Taliesin. Taliesin makes a roll and gets a 17. Matt whispers to him again, and Taliesin thinks this over, and then offers to fix Garmelie's ocarina to help improve the bad first impression they made by kidnapping him. If they can't steal whatever it is that he wants, he'll stop guiding them, and there's no harm, no foul. The deal is over. Vex has no love for the city of Singhorn, but it would be good to talk to them about making use of their army against the dragons. Percy also says, it's the Feywild, we're going to wind up making a deal with someone at some point. We might as well make this one, which is just an incredibly Percy train of thought to take. Once the ocarina is fixed, Garmelie seals the deal by shaking the twins' hands, and they feel a shiver in their spine. There might be consequences if they try to break this deal. And then, as their guide, Garmelie gives them the more specific information that they've been asking about for a few episodes now. They get the cheat codes for the Feywild.
3 things you wish to avoid as we progress further. 1. The hut of Odena. She's a terrible woman. If you see a hut, don't go. They may smell enticing things, delightful smells, sounds of soft music, a gentle light across the shade and sea. Two words at once. I'm drunk. But not go near the hut. Avoid the hut. No hut.
No hut.
No
Two.
hut.
Avoid the last campsite of Sorodun the Happy.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Avoid it. Trust me. Avoid it. If there's a campsite, that's empty, looks happy, avoid it. And 3, avoid the theater.
I love the theater.
Oh, that's good advice,
Theater.
actually.
Avoid the theater.
Just
Wait,
in
is this-
general, the
is-
theater?
Just in general, I hate all
Musicals?
theater. Let's avoid the theater, please.
All Vox Machina has wanted leading up to their Feywild journey was a clear roadmap, some clear guidance. And now they've got it. They know what they should avoid while they're in the Feywild. And I'm sure they'll definitely avoid all 3 of these things. Players. They're paradoxes. Garmelie falls asleep, so they try dispelling magic on Vex, but the shiver remains. They lock Garmelie up for the night, and then Scanlan stays up reading, and Vex has trouble sleeping, but the rest of them go to sleep. And then Matt drops a bomb on Percy.
Percy, as you get ready to go to bed, you feel this strange tickle at the back of your head
Oh, God damn it. Okay.
that dissipates. And
Is it what I think it is?
it is the fading of a charmed person's.
Okay, God damn it.
Yeah.
The fading of a chunk?
Son of a
Well, it's over then.
And just as I'm going to bed? Or just as I wake up?
Just as you're going to bed.
Okay.
You fuck us.
He's the reason
I've
that
had
Did you fuck us?
I'm not quite going to go to sleep yet. I'm going to go see who else is still awake.
Okay. Scanlan is reading in his room, the door slightly ajar.
Oh, yes, yes. The little fucker jumped me. I knew it! I suspected it. That's why I tried to use counter charm, but I don't know how to use it.
We made a bloody deal with him.
Well, we can always back out on the deal. I mean, you and I could...
Well, no, we can't really.
What, is there some sort of blood pact that we made?
You make... I don't know exactly how it works. It's just in any book you read about Feywild, you make a deal, and it's a deal, and you have to deal with it.
What does that mean? You and I could go down to his room right now and just kill him and be done with it.
I don't think that would work.
Would we be cursed?
Maybe?
Haunted forever?
Probably.
Oh, man. That sucks. I want to be haunted? That's for you and Vax.
You look lovely in eyeliner.
No baggage, man. No baggage. What do we do?
I suppose we...
We made a deal with a devil of some sort.
It was inevitable.
Is there a way to trick the trickster
Possibly.
into releasing us from the deal?
Could be.
Because, you know, I'm a sly talker.
When did this show turn into Rosencrantz and Guildenstern?
Now, I love that scene, but do you know why it happened? Because Taliesin, who was fairly certain he was the target of a charm person spell, decided to roll with it. I get comments all the time, basically saying that I shouldn't judge a certain former Critical Role cast member too harshly for metagaming, because Taliesin metagames all the time. And I made a whole video about the different kinds of metagaming, because the chances are that if you see somebody doing something that you consider metagaming and the GM doesn't say anything about it, and it keeps going for several years, it probably doesn't bother this group and that GM as much as it bothers you. And in this case, this is the kind of thing I see people metagame all the time in games. They try to figure out how they can justify making their characters distrust somebody that they distrust as a player. And I want to give the biggest of ups to Taliesin for just saying, okay, Percy is almost certainly enchanted, but I'm not going to play him as a radically different character, and I'm not going to fight against this. I'm going to just roll with it. To be completely honest, I even think that GMs should take a cue from how Taliesin plays Percy and apply it to our own NPCs when they get charmed. Too often when an NPC gets hit with a charm person spell, we end up playing it like they got hit with a love potion. Matt will often do the same thing. I think actually a lot of actual play GMs do, because it's an easy shorthand, and it's a fun reward for players so they can definitively see that their spell had an impact. Plus, it's just a fun way to play a character for a little while. It can even lead to some shenanigans, as the charmed NPC is way more accommodating of the player's requests than they ever really would be otherwise. But when Percy was charmed, Taliesin just played him as the responsible adult trying to find the best solution for everybody. He played him like the good cop in a negotiation. And that is a much more subtle and realistic way to play the effects of that spell. Percy tells Vex as well about the charm, since she's also awake, and after they discuss Garmelie, she asks another question. Does she look like she comes from money?
Does this have something to do with that city? It does, doesn't it? Who's there?
Well, everyone. We were judged growing up. I don't look forward to seeing that again. It's not important.
I disagree. I think that if you're worried about them knowing whether or not you've made your money and made your fortune, I don't think that's going to be the thing to earn their respect. I think you're better off, A, with the company that you keep, and B, with the fact that you're probably just better than most of them. I've known a lot of people with money, and they are definitely not worth you. And besides, if they have something nice that makes you feel inferior, we can just take it.
I like the way you think.
Vex has a pretty huge character flaw, and we've talked about it before on this show. She's greedy, and this flaw has presented issues for the group in and out of character, especially whenever the party loots a lair in the aftermath of a big fight. But it has also led to some really powerful moments, like Vex's panic about leaving their home in episode 42, or the big moment in episode 44. But I love this scene especially because it truly does help inform everything about Vex. Why is she the way she is? Why does she seek money at every turn, seemingly never satisfied? Why was she so invested in the party getting high status with Sovereign Uriel? Because she still craves validation. She was essentially told that she wasn't good enough for high society, that she didn't belong amongst the upper crust. So she's been pursuing that approval in some form or another for years. But here's what makes this such a great character choice. I don't think it's where this behavior actually came from. I think Vex's greed just came from the fact that Laura is a loot goblin. She likes getting the shinies after they kill monsters. In real life, she's famously good at haggling, so that behavior also crossed over to Vex. The fact that she wanted to be in the council meetings with Sovereign Uriel probably had just as much to do with her FOMO as it did with her character's longing to be a part of something greater than herself. And that's to say nothing of the fact that a lot of D&D players do this kind of thing anyway. The early editions were all about collecting gold. That's how you gained experience points. And this reward system carried over into video games, which, as we discussed earlier, is how a lot of these players got into the hobby. But it seems like, now this is pure speculation, but it seems like at some point, Laura might have realized that the implications of this sort of behavior in the world of a D&D game just felt different than it does in a video game. Functionally, it's the same. Someone is giving you all this gold and all these magic items as literal rewards for killing monsters. But the cast also takes the world of the game very seriously, and in a real world, Vex's behavior around gold and status would be a bit extreme. So again, I have no idea if this happened, and even if it did, I don't know when. It could have happened after episode 3 of the home game. But I can tell you what I would have done. And I would have worked backwards. I would have looked at my character's behavior around gold and status, and looked at the backstory that I came up with, and realized that, you know what, this tragic backstory could provide a really wonderful explanation for that behavior. And as a result, we get a scene that really makes me like Vex a whole lot, and makes me feel for her, even though, as I said, it feels like a justification for her playstyle when that is a perfectly valid playstyle. There's nothing wrong with it, but this helps to explain it and make it make sense within the world of the game. And I think that's really wonderful. The next morning, Pike wakes up early and greets Garmelie and gives him a huge canvas of butcher paper and asks him to draw a portrait of the party, and she asks for it to be as ridiculous as possible. I love the detail that Matt adds where Garmelie doesn't really know what she means by that, which potentially implies that he's just drawing his best impression of what his subjects actually look like to him, and he's not necessarily trying to mock anybody. And since we've been talking about Matt Mercer's descriptions, let's get one more.
And within the hour, he has completed an extremely well-detailed portrait. And I mean portrait, everyone standing shoulder to shoulder like a family above a mantle. And it is grotesque. Horrifying. I mean, you look like perhaps the Trickfoots had been keeping the bloodline strong for a very, very long period of time. A droopy face, one eye sinking over the other. It's. You don't even have the right number of fingers. You see Grog in the back, who is as wide as the rest of everybody. He's just behind them like this giant wall with this tiny little head with a tongue kind of lolling out the side. It looks like he has one finger as a thumbs up and the other one's up his bum. In the front, you see Vex and Vax, the twins, are just furiously making out. And they are both just clutching each other. It's terrifying. Keyleth is currently clutching the side of a tree happily, and as she does, her eyes are going in different directions. And the tree itself is like trying to push her off the branch.
Yeah.
You see Percy, who is extremely tall with this squat, kind of thin head with these giant glasses that make his eyes bug-eyed and strange. You see a little bit of scruff on the chin that's actually kind of turning into this long, awful, kind of matted dingleberry mess of a goatee. And he has both of his guns pointed at his head, going... And next to that is a perfectly defined, unchanged portrait of Scanlan Shorthall.
I just wanted to hear you explain it. Okay.
I don't know whether Matt had prepared his description of the Feywild in advance, and I don't know whether he had prepared descriptions or even just rough notes of the other sketches in Garmilli's book in advance. But we know he hadn't prepared anything for this moment, since he did not know that Pike was going to request this portrait. But thankfully, he knows these characters really well by this point, so he is able to improvise some descriptions that do a great job of mocking them, while also including some details that ring true. These are effectively roasts of his cast of characters, and he does that by focusing on one key trait of most of these characters and ramping them up to 11. Grog is the big dumb guy, Percy is the gun-toting madman, Keyleth is the tree hugger, Vex and Vax have their codependency. Pike, I'm not sure about. It could be a reference to her complicated family legacy, which we've only really heard hinted at in her backstory video. But also, Matt just has less to go on for Pike, given how little she's able to be at the table these days, so she might have just gotten the generic goofy face description because it's all he could come up with. Or maybe because he hadn't yet committed to descriptions that highlighted something true about each of these characters, which he started with Grog and then continued for the rest of them. On the flip side, Scanlan's description works on a few levels. One, it's a reflection of Scanlan's extreme vanity. We know Scanlan is obsessed with his appearance and how he's perceived. He commissions paintings and tells stories of the party's exploits. So seeing him exactly as he is kind of reflects that, although if that is what Matt had in mind, he might have had him looking into a mirror or something like that. However, this drawing of Scanlan might also represent the fact that Scanlan is the most puckish of all the party members. So perhaps his behavior is so close to that of the Fae that this Fae basically sees Scanlan as he is. But whether any of those are true or not, there is a third explanation. It's just a great joke, to end on Scanlan being completely unchanged and presumably uninsulted. It's honestly just a great button to put on the whole scene. This description of the mural also serves as a really funny parallel of the child's drawing of Vox Machina in the sewers of Westron. In that scene, Matt got to describe each member of Vox Machina, and just the act of being drawn felt like a moment of importance for the cast. Here, Matt basically just roasts the party, and so each of them are waiting to hear what he's going to do to mock them. It's a really fun reversal. Pike hangs the mural over the mantelpiece before anybody else wakes up. Ashley seems to love Garmilli, and I get the sense that this love carried with her until much later in the course of Critical Role, because it seems to have informed a future character creation decision that she makes. We'll get there when we get there. When everybody wakes up, Percy tells the others that he was charmed and makes sure that Garmilli knows that he is not to be trifled with. They'll keep their deal, but if Garmilli screws them over, well, Percy says that he's possibly the worst person Garmilli has ever met, and Garmilli will figure that out if he betrays them. Garmilli isn't telling the party just yet what he'd like them to steal, because my guess is that Matt does not know yet, and he's going to need that week to figure it out. So Garmilli says he'll tell them what he'd like stolen once they get into the city. They wade through a marsh, careful to avoid the mandrakes that Garmilli warns them about. Then they arrive at Singorn, and Matt points out one of the threshold crests, the magical runes on the walls that enable Singorn to travel to the Feywild when the city's in danger. The guards fire some warning shots at them, but Vex and Vax, the Vassar twins, that's their last name, they identify themselves at the gate. At this point, Garmilli is invisible, walking with Grog. The guards let the party in, although they are going to escort them and keep a wary eye on them. And as they enter the city, Matt tells the twins that there is a notable military presence, much more so than they ever saw when they were kids here in town. And that's where Matt calls the session. And to this point, when the players realize, oh, we're going to reunite with the twins as father at our first live show. And that is going to be a terrific scene, which we will discuss in 2 weeks when we tackle episode 60, Heredity and Hats. So make sure to come back for that because we're going to have a lot to talk about. In the meantime, make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell so that way you can stay up to date with all of my other videos. I've got some really fantastic videos between now and my next Critical Role video, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of them. You can also support me financially on Patreon if you would like to do so, or on Ko-fi or by becoming a YouTube member. Any of those help a lot, and you get some really nice rewards for your support. I would also love for you to join my Discord server or sign up for my newsletter. Those links are in the description bar below. And click here to watch my latest video. It's about the world of Pathfinder, which has some awesome ideas in it. Until next time, play fair and have fun.